number 9. And finally, our 10th item is messaging code generation. So this is something that is very new, and it's not in the currently released version of WebWarp that you can download, but that's coming up as soon as we do the next release, which is fairly close to where it stands. So let me show you how that works. So here, we talked about services, which is all the RPC stuff with code generation, test drive, and so on. We talked about data management. And for all the messaging stuff, it's right here. So here you can see the connections that are established to the server. In fact, let me quickly go back to item number 9 and play this video one more time to show you what happens on WebWarp side when this video is streaming. So right here, the video is streaming, and notice that, actually, let me just quickly refresh this. So here's WebWarp is the application that I was connecting to. So you can see all the information about input traffic, output traffic, number of connections. If there are any shared objects, they will show up right here. So there's the management console will give you a fairly decent amount of information about what's going on your server. This connections right here is the connection that I have coming from this application. If I remove it, this video is going to freeze because there is no connection. Okay, and you can see that the connection is now closed. Okay, so that was a kind of quick digression from the main item, which is messaging code generation. So if you are familiar with how Flex messaging works, okay, you know that there is a producer-consumer API for Flex clients, okay, and those APIs are centered around the concept called messaging destinations. So WebWarp also supports messaging destinations, and you can use them today. So in the version of WebWarp that you download today, you can connect to a messaging destination that is linked to, let's say, JMS, or WebWarp has its own message distribution implementation. So all the destinations are sitting on the server side in a special file called messaging-config. Okay, something that we added is the ability to work with messaging destinations. So here you can edit these destinations. So here's this destination is linked to JMS, and it uses polling to connect, or you can use RTMP. And this one is linked to JMS that uses ActiveMQ. This destination, it's in memory and it uses polling. Okay, and you can edit and see the message throughput in these destinations for messages coming in, messages going out. Something that we added, well, all of this which you see here is new in the version that is coming up. But in addition to this, we also added code generation. Okay, which actually makes perfect sense, because if you do have a destination. And we support Flex, Flash, and we added support for Ajax and Java. We thought, well, why not just generating the code that you can use out of the box to do the pub sub just with the code that you download. Okay, so here you can quickly download the code for Flex client, and here's the WebWarp producer, WebWarp consumer, or you can use Flex SDK producer consumer APIs to exchange messages with this destination. We also added support for basic Flash, so if you use like CS5. You get all the Swix and ActionScript files to use this. And finally, we added support for Ajax. So you can use Ajax client, which has dual implementation. It uses WebSockets by default, and if WebSockets are not available, it will switch to polling to do the messaging with this specific destination directly from JavaScript. Okay. And finally, there is a native Java client. So here it is, the Java code that will do exactly the same producer-consumer stuff. Okay. Now the cool thing is that if you have a destination, you can have as many different types of clients communicating with this destination. So you could have a Flex client communicating with an Ajax client that uses WebSockets, and then on top of this Java comes in and uses attaches itself as a consumer. Okay. So here's with this Ajax client, I downloaded this code and it's sitting right here. So you see that these two are actually these files. So if I open WebSockets, oops. All right, so here's my WebSocket client 1, and I'm going to open another one. All right, so here it is, 2 clients. And this one, let's say we're going to call him Joe, and this one is going to be Bob. And we can say, hi Joe, publish. And here it is, the message coming from one client into the other one. And then here we're going to say, hi Bob, publish. Oops, here it is. So this is like pure JavaScript client, uses destination that is built into WebWork and managed in WebWork. Okay, the code is not final yet. We're still going through some changes, and expect a release, I would say, in the next 4 to 5 weeks or sooner. Okay, so that's number 10. Let me check if there are any questions. Okay, so Rajiv is asking, and it's probably going back to the data management. If we want to use Hibernate, will that conflict with the data synchronization feature? So if you use Hibernate, well, really Hibernate and WebWork data management are two different alternatives. You can definitely use Hibernate with WebWork. In fact, we are adding very cool support for Hibernate models deployed in WebWork, also which also includes code generations and so on. But as far as the client synchronization and really just client synchronization, then it would be up to you to implement this. So the client synchronization is part of WebWork data management framework. Any plans for JSON support? Yes, definitely. We added JSON on the .NET side, and we're going to be replicating this functionality on the Java side. So JSON more than likely is coming in the next build, next release of WebWork for Java. Okay. Ken is asking, where is the FLV file being stored? So FLV file, currently it defaults to, if you go to your webin folder, then classes, and there is a folder called streams, and that's where FLV file is stored. And when you record your FLV, by default it's going to go into here, and you can override that functionality by specifying a different path in the configuration file. Okay. Eddie is asking, what kind of data rates can WebWork handle? Could it handle large volumes? So you're talking about data rates of messages coming into the server. Please correct me if I'm wrong. So WebWork can handle quite significant data rates. So there could be, we have deployments where we have thousands of concurrent clients hitting the server doing both messaging, data management, and RPC. And you can also deploy WebWork in a clustering environment, which will increase your scalability significantly. So from the scalability perspective, it's a very robust server. WebWork has been around for almost 8 years and has gone through a lot of different cycles, both in optimizations and it's just in its own maturity. So at this point, I can assure you that it can support very high number of data rates. For all the RTMP stuff, it uses NIO, which makes it even more scalable and gives you much larger throughput for data messaging. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question, Eddie. Now that's it as far as the top 10. I could actually go on and give you a lot more than these, but since the title said 10 reasons, I'm just going to stick to these 10, and hopefully I know we're going to do more of these later next year. But if you guys have any questions, we still have a few minutes left, so I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have at this point. Okay, Stanley is asking whether you can port Red 5 apps to WebWork. Yes, definitely. Now, one of the things that you need to know is for RTMP protocol. Okay, so just for the encoding, decoding of RTMP. WebWork bundles Red 5 protocol part into it. So all the RTMP encoding, decoding is actually done by Red 5 bundled inside of WebWork. And not only that, we made sure that there are some challenges out there as far as deploying Red 5 in various application servers, JBoss and so on, and JD and so on. So we do make sure that it is deployable with Red 5, because Red 5 has a lot of different jar dependencies. But we go an extra mile to make sure that that's not going to bar you from the fact that you can deploy the entire package into those containers. So as far as porting Red 5 apps to WebWork, you can definitely do that. And more than likely just really going to be like plug and play. But if you run into any issues, please let us know. There's a developer forum or you can just ping us on Twitter or send us an email. Okay, there is a question. When you tie a many-to-many relationship together with an intermediate table, what do the functions look like that tie the tables together? That's a good question. So by default, and let me switch back to perhaps to the code view. All right, so let's say that there is an account. Let me just switch to this account. So account has this related, let's say related orders, and that's going to give you a collection. And related order may have related something else. So if you have many-to-many and you solve this problem by an intermediate table, then you're going to have those relationships described through the code. Okay, so the functions will look exactly the same. So you will have related, entity that represents the table, and in most of the cases, the many-to-many problem is solved the best by adding your own custom code, either on the server side or actually on the client side, that you can invoke that will do the processing for you to extract the collection for a particular entity. Okay. There is a poll that I'd like to run, and please feel free to continue with your questions. And also, if you could take a moment to answer this poll. Okay, and I'll go back to the questions. Okay. All right, there's a question. If my server-side code contains Java hashmap object that need to be returned back to the client, will there be any problem from WebWork in making sure the hashmap data is returned correctly? There won't be any problem. So for all the built-in Java collection types, whether it's a hash map, hash table, linear collections, lists, generics of any of these types, WebWork will return the data correctly. Okay. So that's as far as the generics, that's something that is also that I believe that we do differentiate ourselves from other alternatives, is that the generic support is bidirectional, and it also applies to vector support on the client side. So you can serialize your generics into vectors on the Java side, on the Flex side, and WebWork will support that as well. Okay, Joe, you're saying that the main desktop screen is off due to the fall, but there's really not a whole lot of happening on the main desktop screen because it just gives you a list of all the 10 items that I talked about here. So you can always go back to the recording and rewatch that if you just want to see it again. But at this point, if you could just take a moment to participate in the poll, that would be great. Okay, George is asking whether there is a shared object monitor. Yes, there is. And it's part of the management console. When you support your messaging app, the shared object monitor will show you everything that shared object contains. It will show you the version number, which is how many iterations it has gone through. And we'll also be adding support for code generation for shared objects, as well as the test drive for shared objects. So you'll be able to modify shared object directly from the console. So that's kind of falls into our vision. Okay, so there is a question, how does WebWork compare to Adobe's Lifecycle ES2? Excellent question. A short answer is, once the video of the seminar is out there, go back, rewatch it, because I really, targeted BlazeDS here, but hopefully subliminally you'll see that many of these features, they stack up quite nicely against Lifecycle as well. So I'll let you be the judge and see, how it compares. But it's certainly a valid question, and we'll be looking into setting up another seminar where we'll be running a comparison between WebWork and LCDS. But that's going to be coming up next year as well. Okay, so we're really out of time now. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to contact us on the forum, Twitter, email. All the channels are open, and hopefully you found it useful. And by the way, there's another webinar that is coming up. It's going to be in January, let me check, January 11th, and we're going to be talking about deployment of WebWork into the cloud. So more than likely we'll target Microsoft Azure first, but we'll be doing a lot more webinars on just the cloud-based deployments in general. So thank you and happy holidays, and look forward to seeing you again here in this webinar environment. So bye now.